Okay, cool. So let's talk about, Griff, you wanted to respond to that one.
Well, yeah, I just think that the 2 weeks thing, the biggest piece of it is that means that there will be a massive influx at random at a specific time. So like with the 1 week thing, we have like every Friday, you have a regular day that people can count on that they know if they get their milestone out before this day that it's likely to get funded. And so keeping some sort of regular thing is really nice. So like 1st and 15th doing bi-monthly, as Bowen said, I think is like a much more predictable strategy than doing bi-weekly.
What do you mean bi-weekly?
Every 2 weeks. So
bi-monthly means
I don't want to go into semantics. Every 2 weeks versus twice a month. So can twice a month could be 1st and 15th, and then everyone knows, hey, if I get my milestone before the 1st and before the 15th, then I'm gonna be likely to get a big fat stack of unicorn money. Bowen?
So what we would need to do is come up with a prorated per day amount of DAC that we would get, because then instead of it being 700 a week, it would be 100 per day, which means that we would get 1,500 per 15 days. Except if it was 31 days, we would get 1,600, and if it was 28 days, we would get 1,400 for that 2 week period. So what I'm saying is that makes the accounting more of a pain in the ass, or we change the amount of money that we're giving people, which is also possible. Like,
wait, I don't understand, where's the 700 coming from? Like that's but that's
okay. 600. Sorry, I had 700 in my head for a different reason, but explaining the math a little bit easier, because now the numbers are just going to get even more wonky. Yeah. So if it's 600 per every 7 days, then you have to divide this by 7, and there's a lot of angry math there. But so that's why I was like, every 2 weeks it makes sense, because then every 2 weeks you get 100. But or go by the 600 every week that we were doing before, and we're just going to change the number for sake of making our brains, or that's why when you have a job and you get paid every 2 weeks, you end up getting screwed the amount of hours that you put in if you get salary. But anyway, I'm done. As long as everybody understands the concept of what I was just saying, then we're fine.
Danny wanted to speak.
Yeah, I got really lost in there because I feel like we're talking about two different things. So the first thing we're talking about is when we make our unicorn delegations, which is the 600 a week that we delegate out. The other flip side of that is the 700 a week for our milestones. And just because we know we have our milestones complete by the 1st or the 15th doesn't mean we change that period. The milestones can still be for that weekly thing, and you just get those weekly milestones in twice a month by the 1st or the 15th if you want them addressed by the unicorn DAC. So I don't hear that we're changing anything about regular awards. We're talking about the 1st and the 15th being a good deadline to have your weekly milestones in to be addressed by the unicorn DAC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, that like this shouldn't change. Like it's not going to be like people get $1,200 every 2 weeks or every 1st and 15th of the month. Like it'll still be 600 every week. And for me, the only change is that I'm just pushing the buttons twice a month rather than 4 or 5 times a month. And so y'all putting it in the weeks, if you do it every week still, that's great. Just knowing that, it won't actually get delegated in the DAP until that 2 week marker. or if you guys want to just make sure that you get it in before the 2-week marker, do 2 weeks worth of like it's not a huge shift. It's just like I think people deserve having something to rely on as far as like when the actual like payment releases are going to happen, and I need to be more efficient, which I can't do on a weekly schedule. So I'm not proposing a big change here.
I do have one more thing I wanted to comment on if I could, because I'm hearing that we would still do the delegations each week potentially, but that you might only do the back end part of that every 2 weeks. Or if we're on talking about that one right now, it feels like it would also be better for your workload and ours if we were doing it on the 2-week basis, because we could literally fund a person's entire weekly milestone if we wanted to do that. And that rather than you having a bunch of 100, 150, 250, 350, if we were doing it on that 2-week basis, it would give us the ability to reduce the number of transactions, if that's a good thing, which I think it is, and be able to deliver on completed milestones more frequently.
Yeah, that would be cool. I feel very resistant to like choosing number dates because it makes it really hard for me to plan into my schedule, because the 15th of the month falls on a different day of the week every month.
I think we lost you again. Oh, there.
I can hear her.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, that'll work.
I'll just say quickly again, I'm opposed to choosing a number like the 1st and 15th to do it on, because the 15th falls on a different day of the week every month. It makes it really hard for me to plan like this huge amount of labor that I have to fit into my schedule. And the whole point is that it happens in a predictable way that people can rely on.
What? You don't want to do it on the new and full moons?
No.
Hey.
Sorry.
Okay, I
so to me, it feels like there's 52 weeks, therefore 600 patches in a year. That's like there's going to be a week 27 in every year. There's going to be a week 28, and you got 600, and you can delegate that to whoever you want and whenever you want. And you can skip 1 week and use. I mean, that's the part that I would say, like, if we can all agree that, as Danny said, you can skip 1 week and then use them the next week and use 1200, then we're pretty much set. On week 26, you don't do anything. On week 27, you spend 1200s. That, to me, sounds like a compromise solution that would work for both, because you could fund an entire person's and also Lorelei. But you can still, obviously, if you want to fund every week, you could still technically do it because you get 600 a week, and week 27, you got to allocate that to somebody. That would be a suggestion.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, are there like any other burning questions about this? Because I feel like we're circling a little bit, and I'd be happy to go on to other unicorn points.
Can I just ask for like a reminder that we have some sort of like at room, hey, delegating this week on Friday, get your milestones in, because like trying to keep track of what week it is, whether it's an on week or an off week, is just way beyond my ability. So, and I think it's beyond most of the team's ability. So if we can compromise with
yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't think we should be expected to delegate every week if it's not going to do anything every week. So
yeah.
I also want to point out that me bringing up thing didn't mean our payroll was using it metaphor to explain what I meant about the due dates and money and 2 weeks versus 15 days.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that needless complication. And I'm done.
Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna move us along to this Argon thing because I think it addresses like a lot of concerns here that like from near the very beginning of the idea of the Unicorn DAC, we wanted to build an Argon DAO that allows all unicorns to have a sign-in to this Argon DAO, and then they can just do the delegating themselves. It's super ideal. This whole like spreadsheet backend process was always a temporary thing, and I think maybe we're just experiencing that it's at the end of its rope, and like that temporary thing has like gone on too long, and so Kai is actually, I think, the only one who's really experimented with this, so I'm sad that he's not in the meeting anymore, but oh, we're live streaming. When did that happen?
It's okay.
When I put it on, is it not something that we can live stream?
I just prefer an announcement.
Oh, I thought we streamed all our meetings, and it's because Kai said he was going to jump off, so I wanted to record it.
Okay, just say when you're starting a live stream. Okay, so where was I? That totally.
Argon.
So Argon, yeah. To have a DAO where each of us unicorns can sign in and just have the funds to delegate. We just have the permission of 600 each week, and that would solve so much of this. I haven't had time for like putting energy into that progress role of the Unicorn DAC, probably because like just the maintenance is so clunky and time consuming. So I was estimating that that moving to a 2-week time schedule would allow me, like, I think it would free up, like 5 hours a month or something that or more, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But I'd like to repurpose that time to like working on this, because I think it would ease everything. And I'm curious who else wants to work on that project, because I think I need like buddies on that.
Can I say that I know we're going to run into some problems on the DAP side and on the Argon side, and I think delegating this to someone who's really experienced with Argon will help a lot.
Like someone not in Giveth?
Yeah, or like Gustavo was working on the Argon co-op and is very deep into this, or at least reaching out for help and not researching it on your own. I can definitely help on the Giveth side, because I know until we have basically the ability to donate to an address, it's going to be almost impossible to do. What are you going to say, Lansky? I'm sorry I interrupted.
Nothing more important. Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So it sounds like Gustavo is a resource.
Quasia is a resource. Yalda is a resource. Who else? Luke Duncan, like anybody who like works deep in the Argon system. Anyone on Argon? Dean, Dean works for
Dean or Dean with an M.
Dean. Sorry, Dean.
Dean.
Dean works for Argon Black.
Okay.
And is deep in it. So I think what we'll find is that. Sorry, go ahead, Matthew.
What's the implementation that we're looking to do now? Like what?
Basically, create a DAO that can donate to milestones. That's it.
And the mouse. Okay, cool. They can't right now. Like Aragon payments cannot go to milestones.
The problem is that we can't send money to an address, right? When you donate, you actually are calling a function in a smart contract. So you have to be able to call that function in the smart contract. Like there are DAOs right now where we can do what we need to do. They're like multi-sig DAOs with a daily spending rate. So like you could have each member can spend 600 DAI a week, and then it would go out. And then what we need to worry about there is some sort of accountability on the back end so that people aren't just sending 600 DAI to their own milestones, some sort of tracking there. But other than that, like basically they have the capability on the DAO side. What we're missing is the ability, but what they can't do is call smart contracts. They can't call functions in smart contracts. And that was something I was working with the Aragon DAC. I was working on making that work, but well, we didn't keep going with Aragon DAC. So, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, with my feedback here is just if we start with an Aragon DAO, I think it would be good to first define what is currently not working for us with the current solution before we start researching and spending time on new technology that is also still in a development phase. I personally think the things that I heard from Danny and from Lansky and some of the things that I prepared are about, the delayed payment. Well, I'm not going to make set the entire attention here because there's no time. But my proposal would be to first see like what is not working well in the current setup and what is a possible solution. Is the Aragon DAO going to solve all of it? Is it going to solve part of it? What part is it going to solve? Who's going to do it? And I think it makes sense to start with the tension and the problem and then go to a solution and not just propose a solution and implement it without any discussion before. And that's my point. This is a bit of a discussion on the proposal you guys already have, but there's not first a definition.
Lansky and Bowen, I think both raised your hands.
Thanks. I think that one of the key issues here is monthly payments, salary payments, regular rewards, and that if we cannot use the DAP right now to pay the milestones that you create, well, it's a salary. It's how bad would it be to not have to justify your salary? I know it's all about accountability, but are we going a bit too far? Can we do salaries instead of calling a smart contract to give to a milestone, just to give it to the person's address? And then everything else, we would have to figure it out. But to solve the biggest tension here, we can actually automate salaries, regular rewards. If instead of sending them to a milestone, we send them to the person's address. I don't know.
Do you mean
how
through like the Aragon app, or you mean through?
Yeah, the finance app has a recurring payment module, I think, right? So putting the addresses instead of the milestones, putting the addresses of the person, and that person will get paid every month.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's an evolution of the system, because then we have to decide on, do we still do the delegations, or does it make sense to just have recurring payments? And that is part of that discussion. Like, do we perform better because we are being back, or our income is being held back with sometimes a lot of time, or not? What is the thing that's going to,
I think this touches on another idea of like, we don't have enough money to just make automated payments work. We're in a scarce resource place.
For sure.
So,
but that like the fact that there is a delay on those payments is probably not going to make it less scarce. It's probably going to stress people out that they cannot pay their rent.
Well, the idea. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess.
I would just like to
make sure that payments aren't late. That's what the proposal is for. But I know that's a different thing. We're talking about Aragon now.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm concerned about when I hear this direction for the solution is we're forgetting that really, I mean, the intention of this experiment didn't initially set out to cover regular awards. It set out to distribute responsibility for funding milestones in the DAP. So I would hate for us to lose that essential purpose of the experiment just because at this particular time it's limited to just regular awards.
That's a very good point, and I'm actually happy to leave the Unicorn DAC or not leave the Unicorn, but maybe like leave my entire 600 a week to give some security that somebody's going to get that paid in that way. So maybe we can use my stream in order to fund it through to test the Aragon app. For example, I offer my 600 DAI a week for testing for Aragon, for example.
Interesting. So that like your unicorn allowance would go each week to like a what did you say? I forget the word you
Payroll
used.
app?
The payroll app. Yeah, and to a payroll function. Is that what you're suggesting?
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Not quite sure how we would structure this, but maybe. Oh, sorry, Bowen.
That's okay. My thing was just really kind of short because it was a question based on the way that we do things already. How own delegations ourselves, because as far as I can tell right now, our giver account we delegate the funds in the DAC to particular milestones. There's the accountability of who paid for what. So if we skip if we were assured that we had the 600 DAI every week into our giver accounts, there's no reason why we can't delegate our own funds to actual milestones in the DAP ourselves, because we'd be like subjugated to having that 600 DAI every week. And if it can't go to one thing, then we find something else to put it to. And then that takes the burden off of Lorelei every week, and we do the delegations, then the DAI just builds up in our account and we can get shamed for not giving it out, or we can give it back to the DAC like once a month or something to that effect, that it's redistributed. That seems to make a little bit more sense than the way that we're doing it right now. Then we become more actively involved in making it work, still benefit of dog fooding ourselves system, because other than scarcity, that seems like the only reason why our payroll would be done through the DAP. So the only two pieces of info that seemed like kind of why are we convoluting the process more than we need to at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think oh, you're muted?
Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like no, Ansky's muted too, but he gave a thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could do something like that where, you know, everyone has their own DAC basically, and it gets topped up to, you know, 1,200 every 2 weeks. And, you know, I mean, that would work, but it wouldn't, everyone would have to have their own DAC. And it, like, the real dream of the Unicorn DAC is that we can funnel donations. We just haven't had any real donations for a while, but we can funnel donations into one pot, and then everyone can split them, and the donors can still have accountability over those donations. So,
but when you're doing the donations right now, like I know that I have a giver DAI to every so what is delegated from my donate pile into milestones under my name. It means that if I look at MetaMask, that name, I could use the DApp to do the same thing myself and eliminate the extra work being done by someone else. So that that money to me by the Unicorn DAC, which means that the Unicorn DAC could still be the DAC that holds the funds until it's given to us to delegate, which seems like it's what's happening right now.
You know, that would be
DAC just seems to be a name.
yeah. The unicorn. I mean, that is something that we can do on the smart contract side. So we would just need to include that functionality on the BAP side, on the UI side, because
I
we
think
went out.
Chris is. I don't want to convolute this anymore. That it
So this is a
ourselves, and it seems
project
like we have the ability to do it.
Yeah, this is a project that I think that there needs to be like a work group offlining this discussion, and I'm happy to make that happen.
Okay.
Danny,
I'm just afraid that if we add more to continue to make it function, and it's going to like add a layer of complexity. That's all. I'll stop talking now.
it's a total concern. Danny had wanted to talk about way back milestones.
We don't really give. I guess the thing that I would say is, as we bring on new folks who are getting regular rewards, they seem to be very, very hesitant and delaying very long to create milestones. And then when they do, all of a sudden I went to look at who I'm delegating to and checked for new milestones, and there's 3 or 4 new milestones under DAPDev, for example, that are over $5,000. So some of the learnings that we get as we're looking at this from the Unicorn DAC, I think it makes sense to provide some feedback to the people whose milestones that we're funding. I mean, Jeff still hasn't been able to collect his. That's over 6,000. It's been there for a couple of months now. Now we've got Andre and Michael with a couple of milestones over $5,000. So I don't know what the answer is to that. If we want to let people know any kind of
I think there's
guidelines, but I think
should be
have some guidelines.
Like this should be part of onboarding. Like whenever anyone brings someone onto and it's a responsibility of people who are hiring these people and managing them, right? Like, there's not one central authority in Giveth that tells people how to technically be a part of Giveth and how you should make milestones and all that. I do some of that, but I don't have control over everybody. I'm not gatekeeping that. So definitely having a culture of you make your milestones every month or more frequently. I think we should adopt that because it's scary having these all of a sudden.
I mean, ultimately we could also decide it's not really a big deal, because there's this thing that I see happening. Like in the beginning, we were very clear we are a decentralized autonomous community, and there are folks who can collect rewards from these different means. Should you choose to do so, this is what you can do. And these folks have chosen to delay, and so as a result, this is the consequence that's going to happen from that, is that may not get paid out for a really, really long time.
But it feels
a couple of things. Weird. It does feel weird, but what also feels weird is to hear how we've just so casually slipped into talking about salaries and payroll and hiring and firing. And these are terms that are corporate terms and mean employment and company and so many other things that come along with it. So, I feel a great sense of caution when I see all of these words entering into our conversation so very casually, that actually can't be done casually. And if we're making some decisions around actually hiring people and being employed, then that comes with agreements and protocol for how you collect your payroll.
Yeah.
So if that's a direction that we're going, then I think we need to acknowledge that that's a direction we're going and put some structure into it. Otherwise, it's also fine to just say, hey, we're loose. This is the way it is. And if you choose to wait and put in a milestone like that, just know you might not see that for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, that like all of the language brings the culture with it. What I was gonna say is weird is just I didn't finish. I was just saying it's really weird to be faced with these milestones and to know, like, as soon as a new one of these comes up, it's like I feel like every unicorn probably sees that and goes, okay, well, I guess I know what we're all going to be like, what treadmill we're all going to be running on for the next like 6 weeks until we fund this thing. And there's no really like guiding left in this delegation process. Like, it doesn't feel like the experiment is doing what it set out to do almost at all.
Right.
I mean, it still is kind of, but it's just so slow and really not like, there's not a lot of room. I mean, we now have this like kind of unspoken, kind of spoken rule of like, you just pay people's salaries and that's it. And like, and yeah, I don't know. It feels super weird. I do feel like this, where we're at with this unicorn DAC is super far off from like the original dream.
And that said, you know, as an experiment, we've decentralized Griff in a way. This was a responsibility that Griff had, and we're all getting to experience what that's been like and to work towards a way to make it better. I also think, you know, in that conversation about how we as unicorns could possibly have those funds to delegate itself, I'm going to give a huge note of caution on that, because all of those challenges that Lorelai's running into, having to do GitHub issues and discover all those things, it will slow us all down if we were to distribute that work too. Because everybody would be feeling that pain. And so, and that being distributed is not a good idea. We want to get that cleaned up before we ask a lot of people to take on something like that.
Well, in a lot of ways, I would actually say that that would be great, is that if everyone would start making GitHub issues when they use the DAP.
Yeah, but people would be getting paid way slower.
Yeah.
They would be.
I agree with you, Griff. In theory, and in practice, it would be that level of pain distributed across everyone right now. If we did it with a really concerted effort, because we knew we had devs who were going to handle those GitHub issues and be there to get it solved with us, no problem. I don't know that we're right there yet.
Yeah.
And the point about that these milestones, that they show up late and that surprises us a bit, and that we know that we have to fill those, even if they would have been made in time, it would still be huge amounts that we have, the limited amount that we distribute weekly. So just if you do the calculations, that then you know that the current system will always cause huge delays in the payment, even if everyone has their milestones up in time. And so I don't think Aragon is going to solve that for us. And the fact that we have scarcity right now, we have to decide, like, if delegating, you know, it's a thing that Kai said as well, the fact that we now delegate, and if someone doesn't delegate to you for like 2 or 3 weeks, does that say something about your role? No, not per se. It's because we all have to choose, and there's so many milestones that need to be funded. So that's the thing, that like, okay, what is then the verdict? That's the thing that we need to solve, right?
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate this meeting as an opportunity to flesh out the state of affairs and the problem and the tension. Like, I really, really like, deep thanks for all of you for coming with your critical thoughts here. I'm really excited to like see this written proposal that you have, Chris. I feel like for me, it's been so long since we had a unicorn meeting. I needed the opportunity to hear what people's perspectives of the problem are before I can even start to like see other solutions besides the ones that have been chewing in my mind for a while.
For sure.
Yeah, like thank you guys all. I would like to, I'd like to like check out and do like takeaway or action items for each of us if that feels good. I know for me, like Chris, I definitely want to talk to you and understand the proposal that you have. That's an item for me, and bringing the 2-week accounting thing to the community meeting on Thursday. I know it met no opposition, but I feel like it's meaty and deserves the full process with clarifying questions and a reaction round. So those are 2 action items for me. And actually, I'm hoping, like, I wrote some things down in the agenda, like notes as you guys were talking, but if you could flesh in any more that I missed, like there was a lot of awesome like description of the problem, so and some ideas for solutions. I don't want to lose any of those, so if you could look over and just add points that didn't get on there. Yeah, those are my action items. Chris, do you wanna check out?
Sure. Yeah, I think, again, most of the things that I heard, well, I guess I already said it. My checkout is just like that. I think it's more productive to first name all the tensions and the problems we have and then come to a solution. And that's why I was a little bit that I wanted to propose the thing and not talk about Aragon integration before we, go from A to Z. But as you said, you that's the thing when we bump into each other. You have your ideas in your head, and I have mine in our life, so we know that by now. So all good. I'll leave it at that. Bowen.
I'm glad all this stuff is coming up too, and it's interesting to hear everybody else's ideas around this. We actually come to some conclusion on some of these issues, and I just I hope we can make it all a smoother process. And I would give it over to Lansky.
Good. I reiterate my test money for the Aragon process. I've used it, and I think it might solve some problems, especially when we can donate to milestones. Maybe that's a milestone that I want to fund with my money. But yeah, then there's the maths as well that Chris was mentioning. How many unicorns are there? How many 600 batches are going out, and how many payments do we have to get out? How much money does it have to get out? If it doesn't match, there's always going to be delays, no matter what platform we use, Aragon or not. And I'll give it to Danny.
Yeah, I asked for this call because I felt like it had gone too long, and I was just seeing the enthusiasm and action around this wane. And it's really, really important when we're doing an experiment to come back and check our assumptions, check our results. I'm thinking a lot about scientific method lately, and what is it that we're looking to discover through this process. And we had a lot of discovery today. I'm excited about that. And we didn't talk about naming at all. So the one thing I want to say is I think we at least need to take off DAC off of this, because it makes all of the automated text look weird, the DAC, unicorn DAC. Other than that, funding strategies are where my brain is at going forward. More that we can get into this means more we can distribute and get caught up. So that's the note I want to leave on. And let's see, Griff?
I couldn't agree more with Danny on this one. I think most of the issues that we're talking about have nothing to do with the Unicorn DAC, at least the core ones, not getting paid on time and these things. It's because we don't have enough money to pay everyone, and we need to be more regenerative. So, you know, those solutions come outside of the Argon DAC, come outside of the Unicorn DAC. For me, the purpose of the Unicorn DAC is to test the DAP into dog food, and to also be making these hard decisions of who gets paid and who doesn't if we don't have enough funding to like be in abundance where we can do all the things we want to do. I mean, in the end, we would always be in this situation where there'd be too many milestones to fund, because that's just always how it is. There's always more people asking for money than money that there is. It's like, even if had like an income of 200K a year, we would have 400K worth of milestones, maybe even more, right? So it's too bad that we have to be in this place where the Unicorn DAC has to do salaries, but I am so grateful for all of you guys to have to make these decisions so I don't have to. And it's really nice. And I can just be like, okay, yeah, you know what, I need to fund, I'll need, like, during this meeting, I threw in like, all those big milestones that the DAP guys made, I just threw in a bunch of money to them so that they could, like, you know, get going, because they weren't making milestones. I had to bug them to make milestones. They finally made milestones, and now, of course, they're huge. But guess what? They're going to feel the pain of, oh, these milestones aren't getting funded very quickly. I better put them up faster, you know. But yeah. Anyway,
Live and learn.
sorry, that's a long checkout, but I love the hats that everyone's wearing. Thank you for wearing my hat so often.
Did everybody check out?
I did.
You did? Okay.
I checked out.
Nice. You're playing. Wow. Okay. I need a hat. Yeah. Okay. Love you guys. Thanks for coming and giving the criticism and all that. I don't know what this is, but that's all fun. Okay. Deviate me, jeez. So we'll see you guys tomorrow at comms and then at community meeting.
Bye, guys.
Yay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
I won't be able to be
Bye.
at the comms meeting tomorrow because I have the funeral, but I will see you guys on Thursday.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Bowen.
All right. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.
Actually,
Oh, yes.
you guys, do you want to
Huh?
talk Hexiards really quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Talk what?
Yeah, let me check this.
Chris takes his own computer.
I will. Give me a second. Do you guys want to talk Hexiards really quick? Do you have a second? You can say no, Danny.
Yeah, I don't need to say no yes to Hexiards. I'm looking over all of the dome stuff and I'm around all day.
Okay, perfect. See you, Danny.
Okay. Yeah, bye.
Oh, hey. I
Wait,
didn't
let me
I
go
thought you were
grab
going-
some water, Griff. Yeah, I'm just grabbing some water.
Yeah, go for it. And I'm going to end the live stream.